it's Dr. Annette Farovich, and I made it outside is what I did for our reading. Not that I'm getting undressed for you or anything, but I'm enjoying this sunshine. That thing has been coming on and off. This is the third cover-up I've had today. And now I'm outside, no cover-up. Although it looks better, it really does. So I'm putting it back on because it looks better. Covers up my giant arms. You know, sign o' the times. We are here in the $1 Million Banknote, and we will see how far we get today as we talk about, oh, it's got the pollen all over it. Oh my gosh. Where did I lay that down that I got pollen all over it? Ready? Let's go. So, he has a banknote. He said it was $5 million is what I thought he said. So, he's getting measured for a coat, right? But my dear sir, I can't give these orders unless you can wait indefinitely or change the bill. Indefinitely, it's a weak word, sir. A weak word. Eternally. That's the word, sir. Todd, rush these things through and send them to the gentleman's address without any waste of time. Let the minor customers wait. Set down the gentleman's address and... I'm changing my quarters. I will drop in and leave the new address. Quite right, sir. Quite right. One moment. Let me show you out, sir. There. Good day, sir. Good day. Well, don't you see what was bound to happen? I drifted naturally into buying whatever I wanted and asking for change. Within a week, I was sumptuously equipped with all needful comforts and luxuries and was housed in all-expensive private hotel in Hanover Square. I took my dinners there, but for breakfast, I stuck by Harris's humble feeding house where I had got my first meal on my £1 million bill. I was the making of Harris. The fact had gone all abroad that the foreign crank who carried £1 million bills in his vest pocket was the patron saint of the place. That was enough. From being a poor, struggling, little hand-to-mouth enterprise, it had become celebrated and overcrowded with customers. Harris was so grateful that he forced loans upon me and would not be denied. And so, pauper as I was, I had money to spend and was living like the rich and the great. I judged that there was going to be a crash by and by, but I was in now and must swim across or drown. You see, there was just that element of impending disaster to give a serious side, a sober side, yes, a tragic side to a state of things which would otherwise have been purely ridiculous. In the night, in the dark, the tragedy part was always to the front and always warning, always threatening. And so I moaned and tossed, and sleep was hard to find. But in the cheerful daylight, the tragedy element faded out and disappeared, and I walked on air and was happy to giddiness, to intoxication, you may say. And it was natural, for I had become one of the notorieties of the metropolis of the world, and it turned my head not just a little but a good deal. You could not take up a newspaper, English, Scotch, or Irish, without finding in one or more references to the vest pocket £1 million and his latest doings and sayings. At first, in these mentions, I was at the bottom of the personal gossip column. Next, I was listed above the knights, next above the baronets, next above the barons, and so on, climbing steadily as my notoriety augmented until I reached the highest altitude possible, and there I remained, taking precedence of all dukes, not royal, and of all ecclesiastics except the primate of all England. But mind, this was not fame. As yet I had achieved only notoriety. Then came the climaxing stroke, the accolade, so to speak, which in a single instant transmuted the perishable dross of notoriety into the enduring gold of fame. Punch caricatured me. Yes, I was a made man now. My place was established. I might be joked about still, but reverently, not hilariously, not rudely. I could be smiled at, but not laughed at. The time for that had gone by. Punch pictured me all aflutter with rags, dickering with a beef eater from the Tower of London. Well, you can imagine how it was with a young fellow who had never been taken notice of before, and now all of a sudden couldn't say a thing that wasn't taken up and repeated everywhere, couldn't stir abroad without constantly overhearing the remark flying from lip to lip. There he goes, that's him. Couldn't take his breakfast without a crowd to look on. Couldn't appear in an opera box without concentrating there the fire of 1,000 lorgnets. I'm not sure what that is. Why, I just swam in glory all day long. That is the amount of it. I don't know it because it had to do something with opera, I guess. You know, I even kept my old suit of rags and every now and then appeared in them so as to have the old pleasure of buying trifles and being insulted and then shooting the scoffer dead with a £1,000,000 bill. But I couldn't keep that up. The illustrated papers made the outfit so familiar that when I went out in it, I was at once recognized and followed by a crowd. And if I attempted a purchase, the man would offer me his whole shop on credit before I could pull my note on him. About the 10th day of my fame, I went to fulfill my duty to my flag by paying my respects to the American minister. He received me with the enthusiasm proper in my case, upbraided me for being so tardy in my duty, and said that there was only one way to get his forgiveness, and that was to take the seat at his dinner party that night, made vacant by the illness of one of his guests. I said I would, and we got to talking. It turned out that he and my father had been schoolmates in boyhood, Yale students together later, and always warm friends up to my father's death. So then he required me to put in at his house all the odd time I might have to spare, and I was very willing, of course. In fact, I was more willing. I was more than willing. I was glad. When the crash should come, he might somehow be able to save me from the total destruction. I didn't know how, but he might think of a way, maybe. I couldn't venture to unbosom myself to him at this late date, a thing which I would have been quick to do in the beginning of this awful career of mine in London. No, I couldn't venture it now. I was in too deep. That is, too deep for me to be... Lucy. No. She's eating my vegetables. She's eating my plants. Lucy, what are you doing? I was in too deep. That is too deep for me to be risking revelations to so new a friend, though not clear beyond my depth as I looked at it. Because you see, with all my borrowing, I was carefully keeping within my means. I mean, within my salary. Of course, I couldn't know what my salary was going to be, but I had a good enough basis for an estimate in the fact that if I won the bet, I was to have choice of any situation in that rich old gentleman's gift, provided I was competent. And I should certainly prove competent. I hadn't any doubt about that. And as the bet, I wasn't worrying about that. I had always been lucky. Now my estimate of the salary was 600 to 1,000 a year. Say 600 for the first year, and so on up year by year till I struck the upper figure by proved merit. At present, I was only in debt for my first year's salary. Everybody had been trying to lend me money, but I had fought off the most of them on one pretext or another, so this indebtedness represented only £300 borrowed money, and the other £300 represented my keep and my purchases. I believed my second year's salary would carry me through the rest of the month, if I went on being cautious and economical, and I intended to look sharply out for that. My month ended, my employer back from his journey, I should be all right once more, for I should at once divide my 2 years' salary among my creditors by assignment and get right down to my work. It was a lovely dinner party of 14. The Duke and Duchess of Shoreditch and their daughter, the Lady of Anne, Grace, Eleanor, Celeste, and so forth, de Bohun, the Earl and Countess of Newgate, Viscount Cheapside, Lord and Lady Blakerskite, some untitled people of both sexes, the minister and his wife and daughter, and his daughter's visiting friend, an English girl of 22 named Portia Langham, who I fell in love with in 2 minutes, and she with me. I could see it without glasses. There was still another guest, an American, but I am a little ahead of my story. While the people were still in their drawing room, wetting up for dinner, and coldly inspecting the latecomers, the servant announced, Mr. Lloyd Hastings. The moment the usual civilities were over, Hastings caught sight of me and came straight with cordially outstretched hand, then stopped short when about to shake and said, with an embarrassed look, I beg your pardon, sir. I thought I knew you. Why, you do know me, old fellow. No, are you the vest pocket monster? I am indeed. Don't be afraid to call me by my nickname. I'm used to it. Well, this is a surprise. Once or twice I've seen your own name coupled with the nickname, but it never occurred to me that you could be the Henry Adams referred to. Why, it isn't 6 months since you were clerking away for Blake Hopkins in Frisco on a salary and sitting up nights on an extra allowance, helping me arrange and verify the Gould and Curry extension papers and statistics. The idea of your being in London and a vast millionaire and a colossal celebrity, why, it's the Arabian Nights come again. Man, I can't take it in at all. Can't realize it. Give me time to settle the whirl in my head. The fact is, Lloyd, you are no worse off than I am. I can't realize it myself. Dear me, it is stunning now, isn't it? Why, it's just 3 months today since we went to the Miners' Restaurant. No, the Watcher. Right, it was the Watcher. Went there at 2 in the morning and had a chop and coffee after a hard 6 hours grind over those extension papers, and I tried to persuade you to come to London with me and offered to get leave of absence for you and pay all your expenses and give you something over if I succeeded in making the sale. And you would not listen to me, said I wouldn't succeed, and you couldn't afford to lose the run of business and be no end of time getting the hang of things again when you got back home. And yet here you are. How odd it all is. How did you happen to come, and whatever did give you this incredible start? Oh, just an accident. It's a long story. A romance a body may say. I'll tell you about it, but not now. When? The end of this month. That's more than a fortnight yet. It's too much of a strain on a person's curiosity. Make it a week. I can't. You'll know why by and by. But how's the trade getting along? His cheerfulness vanished like a breath and said with a sigh, You were a true prophet, Hal, a true prophet. I wish I hadn't come. I don't want to talk about it. But you must. You must come and stop with me tonight when we leave here and tell me all about it. Oh, may I? Are you in earnest? And the water showed in his eyes. Yes, I want to hear the whole story, every word. I'm so grateful just to find a human interest once more, in some voice and in some eye, in me and affairs of mine. After what I've been through here, Lord, I could go down on my knees for it. Lucy, come here, honey. He gripped my hand hard and braced up and was all right and lively after that for the dinner, which didn't come off. No, the usual thing happened, the thing that is always happening under the vicious and aggravating English system. The matter of precedence couldn't be settled, and so there was no dinner. Englishmen always eat dinner before they go out to dinner because they know the risks they are running, but nobody ever warns the stranger, and so he walks placidly into the trap. Of course, nobody was hurt this time because we had all been to dinner, none of us being novices, excepting Hastings, and he having been informed by the minister at the time that he invited him that the deference to the English custom he had not provided any dinner. Everybody took a lady and procession down to the dining room because it is usual to go through the motions, but There the dispute began. The Duke of Shoreditch wanted to take precedent and sit at the head of the table, holding that he outranked a minister who who represented merely a nation and not a monarch, but I stood for my rights and refused to yield. In the gossip column, I ranked all dukes not royal and said so, and claimed precedence of this one. It couldn't be settled, of course, struggle as we might and did. He finally and injudiciously trying to play birth and antiquity, and I seeing his conqueror and raising him with Adam, whose direct posterity I was, as shown by my name, while he was a collateral branch as shown by his and by his recent Norman origin. So we all processioned back to the drawing room again and had a perpendicular lunch, plate of sardines and a strawberry, and you group yourself and stand up and eat it. Here the religion of precedence is not so strenuous. The two persons of highest rank chuck up a shilling. The one that wins has first to go to the strawberry, and the loser gets the shilling. The next two chuck up, then the next two, and so on. After refreshment, tables were brought, and we all played cribbage, sixpence a game. The English never play any game for amusement. If they can't make something or lose something, they don't care which, they won't play. We had a lovely time, certainly two of us had. Miss Langham and I was so bewitched with her that I couldn't count my hands if they were above a double sequence. And when I struck home, I never discovered it and started up the outside row again and would have lost the game every time, only the girl did the same. She being in just my condition, you see, and consequently neither of us ever got out or cared to wonder why we didn't. We only just knew we were happy and didn't wish to know anything else and didn't want to be interrupted. And I told her, I did indeed, told her I loved her, and she blushed till her hair turned red, but she liked it. She said she did. Oh, there was never such an evening. Every time I pegged, I put on a postscript. Every time she pegged, she acknowledged receipt of it, counting the hands the same. Why, I couldn't even say 2 for his heels without adding, my, how sweet you do look. And she would say 15-2, 15-4, 15-6, and a pair are 8, and 8 are 16. Do you think so? Peeping out aslant from under her lashes, you know, so sweet and cunning. Oh, it was just too. Well, I was perfectly honest and square with her. Told her I hadn't a cent in the world but just the £1,000,000 note she'd heard so much talk about, and it didn't belong to me, and that started her curiosity. And then I talked low and told her the whole history right from the start, and it nearly killed her laughing. What in the nation she could find to laugh about I couldn't see, but there it was. Every half minute some new detail would fetch her, and I would have to stop as much as a minute and a half to give her a chance to settle down again. Why, she laughed herself lame. She did indeed. I never saw anything like it. I mean, I never saw a painful story, a story of a person's troubles and worries and fears, produce just that kind of effect before. So I loved her all the more, seeing she could be so cheerful when there wasn't anything to be cheerful about, for I might soon need that kind of wife, you know, the way things looked. Of course, I told her we should have to wait a couple years till I could catch up on my salary, but she didn't mind that, only she hoped I would be as careful as possible in the matter of expenses and not let them run the least risk of trenching on your 3rd year's pay. Then she began to get a little worried and wondered if we were making any mistake and starting the salary on a higher figure for the 1st year than I would get. This was good sense, and it made me feel a little less confident than I had been feeling before, but it gave me a good business idea, and I brought it frankly out. Portia, dear, would you mind going with me that day when I confront those old gentlemen? She shrank a little, but said, no, if my being with you would help hearten you, but would it be quite proper, do you think? No, I don't know that it would. In fact, I'm afraid it wouldn't. But you see, There's so much dependent upon it that then I'll go anyway, proper or improper, she said, with a beautiful and generous enthusiasm. Oh, I shall be so happy to think I'm helping. Okay, that's it. We have got, let's see, how many more pages? A few more pages. Only 3 more pages. So we'll be done and we'll see what else we're going to read. So this is Dr. Annette Farovich. I hope you like this story. I do. You really get a sense of how Mark Twain writes. Not that I am a literature expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I do remember reading Mark Twain and having a really hard time with his vernacular because he uses all different kinds of cultures and he talks in that culture. So I had a hard time getting used to it, but you could hear how I read. I think I did a pretty good job on that one, much better than I'd done in the past. So I'm getting his vernacular down, and it's his stories are quick paced. So we will finish that story up tomorrow. Thanks for joining me here in the reading room. This is Dr. Annette Farovich. I'm the teacher. This is the classroom. I'll see you tomorrow, 8 a.m.